We're gonna let him talk. We're gonna let him talk. All right.
You've heard of Leah Thomas, right? She's a transgender swimmer who won an NCAA championship in the 500-meter freestyle last March.
Thomas wins the NCAA championship.
Athletes in Perth can no longer compete at elite international competitions, like the Olympics. This policy was announced by FINA, which is the international federation that oversees 6 different water sports, including swimming and diving. The rule only permits those who've transitioned before the age of 12 to compete.
Time. The rule, you can compete if you transition before the age of 12. Are we hearing these words? 12? So that means at 12 years old, you decided you want to be the opposite gender. Like you got to take chemicals in order to change what Mother Nature did so that if you want to play sports and go to the Olympics, you can, because you have to do it before 12. The fact that you can even do that before 18 is scary. And the fact that people are even trying to have a man in women's sports at any age is crazy. It's crazy.
Heat. Why? It stems from the ongoing debate about whether or not female transgender athletes have a competitive advantage. Now we're going to get into it, but before we do, it's really important to remember that behind every trans athlete is a human being, not just a headline or a stat. This is also a really new conversation with more questions than answers. So we're going to start by looking at how the facts and science can help us understand more about the trans athlete debate. Sports have almost always been divided along gender lines. But what does this mean? Well, it means men compete against other men and women compete against other women.
Simple.
And actually, if you look back far enough, women's sports didn't even really exist.
Yeah.
So I guess for a while, it was just men competing against other men. Take the Olympics, for example, the peak of human sport. Well, not for the first one, because women weren't allowed to compete, which means it was only the peak for men's sport. Since then, we've definitely come a long way, but those traditional gender lines for men's sport and women's sport still exist. Take the pro leagues, for example. You have the WNBA and the NBA, the PGA and the LPGA, the NHL and the PWHPA. You get the point. Women still compete against women, and men compete against men. There has been some crossover, but it's really rare. The big one that comes to mind is Manon Rayon, a female goaltender who played for the NHL back in the 90s.
Yeah, that's fine.
But for the most part, sport is divided along.
We have to understand sometime. If you are a female and you decide to compete in male sports, that is your choice to do. And you are doing it at a disadvantage. That's the facts. So if you decide that that's what you want to do, fine. But as a man, I wouldn't want you in my locker room. Like, even if you could kick the field goal, you'd be kicking like. With that being said, boys in girl sports at any age, no.
On gender lines. And the reason for that is a commonly held belief that men develop differently than women, and giving them an athletic advantage. So in order to see elite level competition in women's sport, there needs to be separate leagues and gender divided sport. Yeah. So now that we've discussed gender division in sports, where does a transgender athlete fit in? Well, according to Joanna Harper, a medical physicist and transgender athletic performance expert,
a transgender person is someone whose gender identity or innate sense of who they are, as opposed to being male, female,
getting to the sports part,
does not match with the way they were assigned at birth. The athlete part of it is the same as anyone else.
No.
You can have a transgender.
I don't care that she's a time.
And you can.
I should be a doctor.
have a transgender woman competing against other women. And it's worth noting.
Stop calling transgender women competing against other women, because you're a boy competing against women when it comes to this. You want to be a transgender woman when you outside of sports, transgender. In sports, you are not a transgender woman. You are a boy. Compete as a boy. What is the problem? And it's competition. Enough is enough already. This is crazy.
Trans people identify as neither male or female.
For example, the first Canadian non-binary trans athlete to ever win a gold medal at the Olympics is Quinn, a Canadian soccer player who does not identify as male or female and plays on the women's soccer team. And transgender athletes competing at elite levels have specific rules and regulations applied to them with the goal of ensuring fair competition.
What is done?
If it's fair, then why would there be extra? This is madness. Why would you need to take any pills to lower your testosterone to be able to compete against women? Just keep your testosterone, keep your hair, get them all that, and compete as a man.
In many countries, in many sports.
No, that's lying. You lying.
In order for a trans woman to compete in the female category,
You're a
she
man.
must first suppress her testosterone.
The rules vary from sport to sport, but the common thread is related to hormones like testosterone, estrogen, and how they affect the human body. See, it's these hormones that people claim give transgender women, in particular, an unfair advantage. Why is that?
Why would you
Well,
take suppressors then?
Puberty. And as Adam Pinkowski, a PhD student in the Department of Kinesiology at the University of Alberta, puts it,
After puberty, what ends up happening is that there's an incredible insurgence of testosterone, and so it's going to be far more concentrated within males versus females.
the hormone testosterone, in particular,
I should have been a doctor. Okay, look. Leah Thomas, she a swimmer. She the best swimmer ever as a female. Do you understand the point? Okay. Every transgender girl is the best in women's sports. What are y'all? Oh, this is madness. Someone's getting paid a lot of money. How did this happen, Skelly? Oh my God. This is not even funny.
Larger, stronger muscles that you can have means that you can generate more force, more power.
it can also affect things like bone growth and mass, and even how much oxygen an athlete can absorb. So the argument here is that no matter how much hormone-suppressing treatment a transgender woman will go through, if they have gone through puberty as a male, they will still have these natural advantages. And some people say that will lead to transgender women dominating in women's sports. However, that has not been the case, since the earliest documented case of a trans athlete competing was tennis player Renee Richards in 1975. Only a handful of transgender women have seen success in elite sport levels. The science around this is still really new, but there have been some studies that show.
Even
This is
after
madness.
hormone therapy, transgender women will still be, on an average, taller, bigger, and stronger than cisgender women. And those are advantages in many, but not all sports.
But, as Joanna points out, because of the testosterone suppressants that transgender women take, they
Also have physical disadvantages.
Why do you want to give them
Being
chemicals?
powered by reduced muscle mass.
At 12 years
reduce the
old, I
rate
gotta
of
get on this. Oh
So
my
that can lead
God.
to disadvantages in things like recovery or fitness or endurance. And so these different advantages and disadvantages will play out differently depending on what sport you're talking about.
which is why Joanna feels that when it comes to fair competition at elite levels,
I don't really think we can have a blanket policy as much as we would like to see that intuitively. I think it depends on the sport. And some sports might need to be more restrictive than others.
people are going to keep discussing this topic, and the issue of fairness is always going to be at the forefront. In fact, FINA also announced that they're looking into creating an open category in which transgender athletes can compete. And I'll leave you with one last fact. According to the United
Okay, as long
Nations,
as we don't have to
the
pay
right to
for it.
sport is a fundamental human right, and human rights are for everybody, regardless of who they are or how they identify. All right, that's it for Can Explains. For CBC Kids News, I'm Isabel McMahon.
I don't know. This has got to stop. This is bad. This is real bad. Look what we're promoting. This is bad. These politicians better not lie when we vote.